Hey, it's Dr. Amama, host of Egg Meets Sperm, and this is the best podcast to get all of the vital information that you need to support your fertility journey holistically for you and your partner, because fertility takes two. Oh, and welcome back to Egg Meets Sperm. I'm so excited that you're here today because I have a really special gift for you. My guest today is an intuitive and mindfulness meditation teacher. She helps boost people's fertility and nurture a healthy pregnancy with less anxiety and more joy. I don't know about you guys, but the number of people that I see on this journey struggling with anxiety, stress, fertility burnout, oh my gosh, you want to hear this talk. We are going to get into very, very practical tips for stress relief, tools to navigate challenges that come specifically with the fertility journey, pregnancy, and then, of course, onto motherhood. So join me as I have this awesome conversation with Louise. Hello and welcome, Louise. It's so great to have you on our podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me here.
You're welcome. And the first question, let's kick it off with, if someone is brand new here, they're struggling with fertility, they maybe have been on this journey for a little bit of time, why should they listen to this episode?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, aside from all your amazing tips that you bring to the podcast that I've listened to myself, in this particular episode, I think we're going to bring a different perspective and really bring in some tips for those high achieving, busy people that don't believe stress relief is possible for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's perfect, because busy people do often have this tendency to be like, well, what are you going to tell me to do? Like,
Yeah, exactly. I don't have time for this, and also just that idea of like, for people that are high achievers, I think it's like we get stressed for being stressed. I know that was, my perspective. And so you kind of don't want to hear it, but there's absolutely achievable things that we can do and we can shift that for sure.
absolutely. So I'm a recovering type A high achiever as well, as you can probably imagine. So what is it about being busy or being stressed that we continue to like propagate this idea that it's just always going to be this way?
Yeah. I mean, that's such a good question. And I'm in the same boat too. And so I think when you say propagate, I'm like, that's such a good word, because I think about it being cyclical in that way of, even if you just take that small example of, I'm stressed because I'm stressed. And I think so many of us can relate to waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to sleep. And then you're like, oh my God, but I need to sleep because I've got to wake up tomorrow morning. And then it kind of sets us on that cycle, right? That's quite an analogy for how we move through our day, where we're like, I'm so busy, but I can't stop and I've got to keep going, but I'm so busy. And we do get really kind of stuck in these patterns. And I think for so many of us, I mean, there's so much I could talk about it, and I'm sure you're aware too, but like, it's that societal way that we're just, it's ingrained within us. So it is so hard to change it. So if anyone has been trying to change it and they're finding it difficult, I would expect it to be. Yeah, so it's not easy, but because it's just so ingrained in us, and it might be something from childhood, like so far back, that gets us into these patterns.
Yeah. And so what do you do if that's just always been you?
Yeah, I think it's awareness is the first step for anything. And I talk about that as a meditation teacher, that once we're aware of something, that's when we can shift it. It's when it's unconscious, that's when it's obviously way more difficult to shift. But when there's some awareness, and we can kind of notice our patterns, that's when we can start to choose a different path. And we can think of breaking it down into those little things. So I noticed that every day I'm at my computer and I'm working and I'm going and I'm going. If I would start to bring awareness to, gosh, I don't really get up and go to the bathroom much, we can start with that small change. So I'm all about like small changes that we might not even notice are happening.
Mhm.
Over time, that's when the shift occurs.
So That's a good point. So observation first. And if you so I'm curious about this bathroom example because that might be me. My day is stacked so much that very infrequent break. So what about going to the bathroom is useful in this, like, stress relief?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was more so in the context of that's an identifiable trait that I know so many because I work in corporates too, and so I know that they just go from meeting to meeting to meeting. But funnily enough, going to the bathroom, it's actually giving ourselves what we need. And I know that sounds so simple, but one of the things we can start to shift with nervous system regulation, for example, is we might not have had our needs met, maybe in childhood or at some point in time. And when we want to start moving into a more regulated state, one of the things that we can start to do is give ourselves what we need. And so something as simple as noticing the urge to go to the bathroom and going to the bathroom seems so simple, but we can be healing a whole history of maybe doing things for other people or pushing ourselves beyond what we can. So, yeah, it's a simple example, but it's one really, really easy. Well, maybe not really easy because I know I was a veterinary nurse and sometimes you are stuck in surgery and you can't get out. And so I know it's not always super simple, but we can work toward it for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, and I like this idea of, like, listening to your body, and that I think that plays a role in a lot of different scenarios. So the bathroom is one example, but I think even, like, listening to your body when it's time to eat or when to go to bed or right, like, all of these simple things that we often tend to ignore that really should be the foundation of a good, healthy lifestyle that are also supporting fertility.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that because we can fall into these traits of putting other people and their needs above our own, particularly if we're high achievers, and even if we just take that straight into the workplace, you need something, you got it. Like we kind of keep going. And so if we can start to listen more to ourselves, we can start to self advocate more. And now we're moving into that fertility space, right? Where it's like, I will speak up to the doctor, even though that this is uncomfortable, because I just need to ask that question. So we notice the urge and we can fulfill it.
I love that. So I feel like we already have 2 really important things. One is gonna be to observe, like, just notice your patterns, see what's happening. Where are some things that you're maybe finding are out of alignment with you, and start there. Number 2, listen to your body. What are some other tips that high achiever type A's can use to get some stress relief? Because we know that stress is so impactful to fertility, especially.
Yeah. I think, again, as a meditation teacher, I'm
Mhm.
probably quite controversial because I often tell people not to meditate. Meaning, unless they already have an established practice, I see so much good intention not go to plan. So, okay, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do it 20 minutes a day, and then I do it on Friday and Saturday, and then Sunday comes and I forget, and then Monday I remember, and then maybe it just falls away. So you've got a 60-minute period there where you did some meditation, as opposed to if someone was like, okay, I'm going to just try and do 2 minutes of something, 5 minutes of something, and then we can create a habit out of that. Even just from like a numbers perspective, that 5 minutes is going to add up more over time than perhaps that, 3 days of 20 minutes, right? So I think it's shifting our perspective that it needs to be these long blocks of time. And in fact, when it comes to something like nervous system regulation and what we were just talking about before, we actually want to break the day, like break it away, because what happens is we are still wired to perceive threats, just like, a deer being chased by a lion, right? We still perceive threats, but we don't often come out of that fight or flight. And our threats are not what people think they are, right? So our threat could be an email from someone asking us to do a task, because then we go into, oh my gosh, I don't have time for this. This is stressing me out, right? Or it could be someone gets an email from the daycare to say the daycare's closing, for repairs, you'll need to find, and then that can send someone off. But we keep going on our day. So we get stuck in fight or flight and we keep going. So this is actually why I would suggest for people to have those breakers in the day so that we're making sure we're not getting stuck in a perceived threat mode in fight or flight. So the way that people can do that, there's a bunch of tips, and I'll give people a couple of examples that they can do, right? So, imagine that you are sort of going through the day. We want to just have those little breaks. So great one is if we go to the bathroom, we just take a breath there, take a pause, because that bathroom can be like an existing thing that we do, that we can do something called habit stacking on top of it.
Mhm.
So habit stacking is where, if people don't know, we've got something that we do already, our morning coffee, for example, and we add another habit on top of it because we've already got an inbuilt habit. So that way it's more likely to stick. Now, we can negatively habit stack, like a lot of people I'm sure are aware of, like waking up and picking up their phone. I do it too, and start scrolling, right? So that's an example of like a negative habit stacking, but we can flip that. So we can wake up. That's a normal thing that we do, and open the blinds. And when we open the blinds, we're getting sunlight in our eyes. We're actually helping our circadian rhythm. We're helping with sleep. So we're already, moving from the very beginning of the day, moving into a positive space. So yeah, we can go to the bathroom, and every time we go to the bathroom, we take a breath. And there's some really other cool, easy stuff we can do, like humming is really something that we can do throughout the day. Taking, just a stop.
Can I just, I love humming. So the science, for those of you guys that are like, what is she talking about? So the behind it is that it stimulates the vagus nerve. It's a really great way to shift from sympathetic fight or flight mode into parasympathetic rest and relax mode.
Yes. Yes. So thank you for that example. Yeah, because sometimes I'm sure, like, oh, do I give you the reason behind it? But it is helpful to know, why are we doing this?
Yep.
But I kind of like it because we can think of, because singing's another one too, right? It does the same thing. So even if you think of like, okay, I'm going to put Beyonce on and sing, that's actually helping you.
But and put in some hip circles while you're at it. But it's really cool to, like, I have a 6-year-old, and the number of times that he is humming or singing on his own without any stimulus is really high. And he, like, it's not working for him at school, like, he's getting in trouble, and I'm like, "What happened?" And he's like, "Oh, I was singing." How God, this is his, like, self-regulation mechanism, yet school is, like, shutting it down.
I know. And you make a good point, right? Because we actually have these things inbuilt in us. And when we start to learn what they are, we go, oh, I noticed that maybe I yawn in a situation that I must have needed to de-stress in. But kids are amazing to watch. Animals are amazing to watch. So I see my cat doing behaviors that actually the same thing, but I see my nephew doing it all the time. And people might be familiar with, we put our hands on our face and rub our face. That is actually one of the things that we do. But it's funny that you said that, like, society does breathe these things out of us. You can't sing and hum at work. You can't, because you can't do it at school. And so, yeah, we just need to pull them back in. They're naturally wired within us. Like, we can bring ourselves, because that's how animals do it, right? Animals don't get an education class on, okay, after the lion chases you, you need to go and do this, right? They just know what to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I got excited about the humming.
Oh, no, no. It was a great interjection. And I think even if people just have those few takeaways, they're really, really helpful just to start bringing them back in.
Yeah, Yeah. I mentioned if you're putting on Beyonce and singing, put in some dancing and hip circles because the hip circles are like, it's kind of like if you're hula hooping without the hoop, that will help blood flow and circulation to the uterus and ovaries. Parents are going like double win.
Yeah. Gosh, it makes me think I should go back to dancing. I did a lot of dancing and then I stopped doing it, but maybe I should go back.
So I have a question for you that I get all the time. Is as type A, especially women, their biggest form of stress relief is going to the gym.
Oh, okay. Right. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Let's talk about that. If you have some thoughts on
Yeah. I mean, I do. Yeah, because I think that it does speak to the go, go, go nature of things and the unfortunate pressure that women have on ourselves. And one of my friends, her name's Professor Leah Rupana. She's great if people want to sort of, she's got a podcast, I think the Misperceived podcast, but she talks about all these ways in which women are unfortunately wired and put, and I say wired because it's not our fault. There's so much pressure on us to be perfect all the time, which means oh, I better do this. I better do this. I better go to the gym. I need to exercise. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to look this way, or not even look this way, but I need to exercise. But sometimes, if we go back to what we were originally talking about, when they're not listening to our body. So I can certainly identify with, I used to do aerial stuff, aerial as my exercise, and I'd have the class scheduled, but I might have had a really long day. And whenever I would catch myself saying, I should go, that was my sign that it was like, okay, there's something externally happening here where you feel that you have to go to this, but do you want to go? Is your body up for it? And to not even go into the science of, I suppose, exercise over rest, but sometimes if our pure intention is not about appearance, but just for health, so I'm going to the gym for my health, we might actually be better off prioritizing the rest.
yeah. And so how can people differentiate? Because I think that sometimes it's easy to like feel like, oh, I should go to the gym and they actually do need to, you know what I mean?
Yes, yes, yes.
Versus I should go to the gym and it's coming out of this place of needing rest. And I just went through this yesterday. I tripped, got back the day before yesterday, woke up yesterday morning and was like, I should go to the gym. And then I like caught myself and I was like, or I could take a nap. And in the moment, I decided to take a nap and that was good. Right? Day, I woke up and had the same, like, I should go to the gym, but I could take a nap. And so I like needed a way to evaluate, like, did it make sense for me to go to the gym today or actually rest? And today I went to the gym and I actually felt better after. So like the pattern, like it's easy to be in a rut of like, I need to go to the gym or I should go to the gym, but you don't ever get there because you've got yourself stuck in a pattern versus it's actually your body needing rest or needing to do something different.
Yeah. And I think you've actually really answered it yourself in that it was like you had the evaluation period after. So when I did the rest day, how did I feel? And when I felt that I should, but I went anyway, how did I feel? And I think sometimes it is that post evaluation period is kind of all we have because we can't always know where that should is coming from. But I think it's like also not, you said falling into a rut. Like, how long does it go on where there is the absence, the exercise, if that makes sense? And another good friend of mine as well, she talks about like exercise from a place of enjoyment. So I know for myself that if I start doing something that I don't enjoy, I will kind of never go. But I think it's also finding something. So this is how kind of wild these shoulds can kind of come in, because it's like, oh, I should do this form of exercise because apparently it's the best. So we can even be doing something we don't enjoy. I personally just love going for walks, and I never really have to talk myself into it. But occasionally, if it's a weekend and I'm sitting there watching a movie and I'm like, oh, I should get out and go for a walk. But then afterward, I always feel better. So, so I think it's a bit of the self-evaluation. And it's also like, yeah, how long is this absence of exercise going on? Is there something else to look at here?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important for people to have this like way of how am I observing myself? It's going back to that step one of observation. Yeah. What do I notice when I do X, Y? And it's the same with food. Like, oh, I had this meal. How did I feel after? And if we can keep awareness of that. So you guys, don't judge me. Please don't judge me. But for years, I used to be like super active, super fit. And then I went into my fertility journey, pregnancy, postpartum. And it's taken me about 7 years to get back into working out and going to the gym. And the first, like, few weeks were probably the hardest. And then it was like a feedback loop kicked in where I did the evaluation and I was like, "Oh, I actually feel so much better when I go to the gym," right? I just feel better. So now it's really easy to, like, continue going to the gym, except every single time I travel, I have a break. And every single time it takes a little bit of, like, overcoming that inertia, if we were to call it that, of, like, I took a break from going to the gym because I was traveling. Theoretically, I could keep going when I travel, but I don't. We usually prioritize everything except for that. And come back, it's like the first few days, I, like, need to I feel like I'm exhausted, but until I get to the gym, I don't get out of that, like, inertia and get back to, like, "Oh, yeah, this feels amazing. Like, I need to do this because I like it."
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's like, it is hard sometimes, right? Because there's all the travel to get there and there's all of the things, and there is the side of it that we don't enjoy, but then it's like tapping into the feeling after. But I think it's also like, whether it's stress relief tools or exercise or food, like things that are good for us, I do believe we can find some way to connect in with each of those aspects that we love, right? So you might like at the gym using the rowing machine, right? So that could be the first thing that you go to. Or someone might hate the gym. So then what's their sport of choice, right? Do they want to just go to a dance class where they put on Beyonce and dance? That might be their thing. So I think it's also finding the ways that, even we talked about those tools before. Someone might, the tip I said about going to the bathroom and taking a deep breath, no, I don't like that one. But maybe they're like, I really do like the humming one. So I think it's like, within the realm of these things that are good for us, how can we find a way to integrate them in our lives so that they're habitual, so that they become lifestyle, so that they become as normal as brushing our teeth, right? Which I hope we all do. It's like finding those things, but it's like connecting into, dare I say, the love of it. Like, what's some aspect of it that you love, or what's one way that you can have this healthy thing in your life that you like? There's a million ways to exercise, right? You can join a rowing club. In Australia, people do the rowing on the boats out in the water early in the morning. Other people are in run clubs, other people
Or tennis or whatever, like, there's
tennis. Yeah, exactly. Pickleball. Is it pickleball?
pickleball. Yeah, I love
That's the big popular one, right? So it's like, and then people are obsessed with it. So it's like, yeah, I think I think we often hear like, okay, we need to eat well, we need to exercise, we need to do stress relief tools. And we're like, oh, this is so boring. I don't want to do this. But there's absolutely ways that we can find what works for us.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so important is really that like if you're brand new to physical movement and are just starting out, like really trying a whole bunch of things and seeing what is it that you enjoy? And you may enjoy something that you don't do all the time. Like I live in a very hot, humid environment and I love pickleball, but the pickleball are outdoors. Oh, well, I have decided I'm only doing pickleball for like a season and then it's on the shelf until it's nice outside.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course, because you've got to do seasons. I mean, Australia's much the same too, right? So when I talk about loving walking, I absolutely don't love walking in the summer. Yeah, but you made me think of something too. It blanked, but if it comes back, but I was thinking about finding something that we love and tuning into it. Oh, it was when I was in school, I did team sports, right? Because that's all there really was. And I was the shortest one in my class. And I actually had really negative experiences with sports and fitness, I suppose, because it was like I wasn't picked for the teams. When I was on teams, they kept me on the bench and it really messed with my self-esteem. So I just wanted to call that out too if we've gone on such a tangent toward the sport thing. But I think it's helpful because it is part of the fertility journey and it's part of, I think, us healing aspects of ourselves. But as an adult, when you talked about discovering things, that was when I discovered, oh, I can go and do aerial like hoop and things like that. And I'm actually really good at it. Sometimes I'm the best in the class. So I had this story. I'm not good at sports. I don't like sports because of something that happened in childhood. But that's what I mean by we can absolutely find then communities that we can connect with, things that we love doing that we just need to rethink it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important from that aspect of just being open and finding like what it is that works for us and our body and like being okay with exploration. So, yeah, we teach that so much for food specifically. Like you, so I don't know if you can see it right now, but this little patch right now, like me experimenting with food and being able to like get feedback about what my blood sugar is doing based on what I eat. And like so much of it is individualized, right? So we can have this like generalized idea of diet, but there's so many like your body's going to differently respond to everything that you eat. And so I think a health and healthcare is moving in that direction of like uber personalized, but I think that it's actually closer to who we are as humans is we're not all template. There's no perfect for everyone. There's no perfection for everyone. It's really like finding what it is that's really that lights you up and more of that.
Yeah, and you're so right. I mean, even in just our household here, my husband's Chinese and I'm white. My background's Irish and a whole bunch of other stuff I don't know. So we just even on the food thing, just grew up eating completely different foods, right? So I can eat dairy all day long. He absolutely can't. So when you talk about, yeah, there's no templates, there absolutely isn't. Even if people just think about their own household, how different are people within it in terms of what they even like, but even what they can consume is so different.
Amazing. So I want to shift gears a little bit because I know you talked about trauma and kind of what your nervous system has been brought up with or like how it got dysregulated. So what is the impact of that? on our health and well-being long term? And how does this connect with fertility?
Yeah. So trauma is a word that we hear all the time now. And I think often people think, oh, I didn't have any trauma. Some people might identify with it. But I think unfortunately, so many people are missing out on healing because they think that trauma has to be a car accident or something really big like abuse that was quite obvious. But trauma can be from a very young age, just not having our needs met as a child or having a parent that was emotionally absent. So maybe even just a workaholic parent or just someone that wasn't attuned to us, right? So I just wanted to kind of preface it with that too, that I don't want people to feel that there isn't a place for healing within them. I think a lot of us experience a lot of things and we cannot compare ourselves to, oh, well, this didn't happen to me, so I can't complain or whatever it is. Because I think that's kind of the rhetoric out there a little bit at the moment now, and people do tend to kind of dismiss their own healing. So that was the first piece. But essentially, through our childhood and through these experiences, and I just gave one, right, where I was in school and I had this relationship to exercise based on being told I wasn't good enough or I was too small. And someone might think that's not a big deal. But then if we talk about the fertility journey and I need to exercise to be healthy, if I hadn't have healed that, I'm already impacted, right? Because there's something in my past. So even if we just think of it in that simple terms, if there's something in your past that has created thoughts or beliefs within you now that you're either conscious of or not conscious of, which we can get into that too, they are then affecting our actions or inactions today. So just to give people that simple example of like, and we know that I had healed that relationship, but let's pretend I hadn't. So in school, I had this experience around sport, and then I have thoughts and beliefs about not being athletic, not being good enough. Sports isn't for me. I have all these thoughts running in my head. I have a belief system. So then as an adult, my inaction is that I just sit on the couch and I don't exercise. So all these things from our past, when we can look back on them and evaluate them. So now we're coming back to, again, number one, it's awareness, right? And self-evaluation. We're able to start to bring it to awareness. Oh, there's something going on there, and we can challenge those belief systems that we have now. And so the reason that these things can affect our nervous system is because we're going to have a perceived threat around something historic. So I'll give another example just to help people out. If, for example, when you were younger, maybe you were around a dog and it was barking and it bit you. That's maybe a more simple one. So then as an adult, when we hear, so again, if that trauma had sat there and we didn't think it was much and we sort of moved on through our life, as an adult, when we hear a dog barking, that could be our threat system goes into alert. We go into fight or flight. And then if we don't face that fear or heal it, that's when we can get stuck into chronic stress. So I don't know if that explanation helps from those different angles, but it's basically like something in our past that we experienced that we didn't overcome at the time, then can pop up in our present in ways that is direct. So like a dog barking, but we might even just have noise trauma. So when I hear noise, a part of me within myself is like, oh my gosh, you're going to get bitten. It's not that obvious within ourselves, but that is what the threat is. So we go into fight or flight, but we can't come out of it because we don't really know what's going on.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely relate. I think one of the ways that I've explained that to clients is it's sort of like we don't do this anymore, but let's suppose you were walking through the forest and a lion jumped out in front of you and you somehow escaped the lion. But now every time you walk down the street and a cat jumps in front of you, your body's having the same physiological response as the lion. Yeah. So, like, you're stuck in that pattern, not the same. Intellectually, you know it's not the same, but in reality, your nervous system is still doing all of the things that it would do if there were an actual lion.
Yes. And I think even to talk about the fertility and pregnancy journey, we can have these traumas unfortunately created within it. So if we go to see a specialist and we have a negative experience in with that person or in that office, then when we go to appointments in the future with a completely different person, we can be really on guard with them or nervous or those situations we're in can set us off. And I even know for myself, my dad had cancer when I was 8. So I had quite a funny thing around hospitals, right? So then you can imagine as an adult, and if you're in the fertility and pregnancy journey and you have to go to a hospital, then without healing that, then you are going to be perceiving threats whereby there's not threats. Like all the doctors can be super friendly and the nurses can be super friendly, but I'm completely on guard and, even tensing my body and, yeah, in a stress response.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what can we do about it?
Yeah. And I know, yeah. And the sigh, it sounds like a lot, right? And I think when we think about all of this stuff, oh my gosh, but all of my childhood and all of the things, and it can simply start with building our safety and capacity in present day. Because so all those things we talked about that are super simple, like the humming, taking deep breaths, taking pauses throughout our day, a lot of this trauma from our past is stuck in our body. So if we can, as simple as letting ourselves know, letting our body know, and through this week, kind of letting that child self know or the past self that experienced that trauma, letting them know that we're safe now actually does a lot of the heavy lifting because we're building a sense of safety within ourselves now and we're signaling to that past self, you're safe now. So throughout the day, even if we're just checking in with ourselves when we are safe, okay, I'm safe. It is amazing how much that in and of itself can do. And then over time, once we've built that safety and capacity within ourselves, we can start to reflect on some of these past situations and we don't want to dive in. We don't want to re-traumatize ourselves. And that's where if we build these daily habits where we're building a safety and capacity and we're coming out of that threat response more regularly, we have a bigger capacity. So think about a lake turning into an ocean. We have a bigger capacity to be able to deal with the stuff. And then over time, we're able to unlayer it. But it doesn't need to be as big and scary and difficult as people think it does. And even for those things that are, maybe not necessarily as big and traumatizing, like I gave the sport example, I can just start to question my beliefs. Why do you think sport isn't for you? Where does that come from? And then journal on that and go, oh, okay. Well, I remember, yeah, you were told this about sport or you were put on the bench. Is that necessarily true? Is that still true? Can you challenge it? And then we can start to build kind of new patterns and new thought things. So even I gave the hospital example too, oh, you're nervous around hospitals. Why is that? Oh, because your dad was sick in hospital. Okay, but is that happening right now? No. Do these doctors and nurses seem pretty nice? Yeah. Okay. So then we can kind of get more comfortable with stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. That sounds like a very easy, practical, and doable tool.
I hope so. Yeah. Because I know I've personally gotten overwhelmed when I'm like, oh my gosh, all my childhood trauma and all of this stuff and how am I going to unpeel it? But it's little by little and it's simpler than people think.
I love that. And so doing this work, maybe the emotional healing that kind of support retraining our nervous system and healing some of the deeper traumas, how is that supporting our fertility goals?
Yeah. So obviously, as I said, stress can be created within the fertility and pregnancy journey, or there can be pre-existing stress and a pre-existing dysregulated nervous system. So if we believe that stress does impact our fertility because of even just simply like our hormones aren't regulated and we're not ovulating and all of those kinds of things, we want to make stress like a primary thing that we work on, because it even impacts nutrient absorption and all of those kinds of things, right? So if we're taking a prenatal but we're completely dysregulated, there is some impact there.
They're not nutrients, y'all. Like you can take all the supplements, but if you're not absorbing those nutrients and it's because your body can't relax or go into pathetic mode, then absolutely. That's a lot of flush down the toilet.
I mean, oh my gosh. But yeah, but it's true, right? And I think that it's so easy to get on Google and go, okay, what have I got to do? I've got to take these vitamins. I've got to, exercise this much and do all of this. But as you said before, it's not a template for each person. So someone might need more rest than another person. Someone might need to work on the stress response before those prenatal vitamins will even work. So, and I also say that, yes, this stuff helps us boost our fertility. It's definitely going to help us in pregnancy to have a healthier pregnancy. But parenthood is uncertain and we're going to get more dysregulated. So I think it's like, this is the time. And I think the way that I've seen it is a perfect healing time, because when we try and get pregnant, I believe it's like when so much stuff comes forth to be healed. What was my relationship with my parents? What is my relationship to exercise and food? And that's why it can feel so much. But if we can look at it as an opportunity to heal, I think, as I said, we can boost our fertility and increase our chances. But we're also setting ourselves up for, a much easier parenthood as well.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. Which for such a lovely conversation, and I love how simple and easy you've made things to be able to apply into your own lives or into all of our lives. We all need this, even if we're fertility stage. So thank you so much for being here. Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way is Instagram at Louise Fertility Pregnancy. I think I've got my handle right. And my website, louisefitzgerald.com.au, because we're in Australia, so we have this silly .au at the end of our website. So.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to connect that into the show notes. And thank you so much for being with us today. This was awesome.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I hope for all of you that are listening in, you have taken some notes and start integrating some of the tools into your everyday life. I think just so much of what you've shared today is very, very, very practical. So thank you for being with us again.
Thank you so much.
If you love this episode, show us some love. And if you would love to leave me a voice memo, tell me what you love, what you hate, and what questions you have that you would like me to answer on Egg Meets Sperm. We're doing that all season long. So send me a memo, let me know what you love, let me know what needs improvement, and most of all, send me your questions.